And we're back. My name is Ralph Lowe, and I am so excited to join you again after a few months of a hiatus. We all need a little bit of a break now and then, and Graham and I decided to take a little bit of a break and but come back to you because we felt that this is needed. So thank you so much for coming and being a part of this Congregation for Clergy. As you can hear in the background, I am standing in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, the site of a monument for Mr. Rogers. You will be able to hear his voice in the background, which is much more as you hear the tones come across right now, much more exciting than my voice. So I know it's been a long time since we've been together, and I just want to remind you what we're here for. We're here for you. We're here for this time to be for you, for this ministry, maybe even a devotion part of your week. So with that in mind, I want you to stop what you're doing. Take a pause, put the laundry down, the coffee cup, whatever it is that you're doing right now. Take a pause. Allow yourself to be present in this moment. Take a deep breath in, breathe out, and in this moment, let God be God. Let us pray. God of great mercy and great love, we are excited to be with you in this moment. Lord, as always, there are so many things on our mind that take us away from moments that we should concentrate on you, be present with you, allow you to walk with us, be with us. As we enter into this time and space, we ask you to be present. Allow our hearts and minds to be in this moment so that we can give you our full attention. Lord, we pray that during this time together, we receive you in your fullness, allowing you to enrich our lives in ways we could never imagine. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
It's a beautiful day for the neighborhood, a beautiful day for a neighbor. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? It's a neighborly day in this beauty wood, a neighborly day for her beauty. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? I have always wanted to have a neighbor just like you. I've always wanted to live in a neighborhood with you. So let's make the most of this beautiful day. Since we're together, we might as well say, would you be mine? Could you be mine? Won't you be my neighbor? Won't you please, won't you please, please won't you be my neighbor? I have always wanted to have a neighbor, and just like you, I've always wanted to live in a neighborhood with you. so let's make the most of this beautiful day. Since we're together, we might as well say, would you be mine? Could you be mine? Won't you be my neighbor? Won't you please? Won't you please? Please won't you be my neighbor? Won't you be my neighbor? Oh, who is my neighbor? You are my neighbor.
You know, I'm wondering if you've ever had experiences that you haven't really shared with anybody because they've been so different, so spiritual, so personal, that you don't share them. Now, I've had a lot of these kinds of experiences, but you know, also there are areas of study that I've engaged in for decades that I've actually, up until the past maybe 5 years, I've not really shared much with anyone because I never really know how people are going to take them. One of the areas that I have been very much engaged in studying, really since I was 17 years old, has been in the area of near-death experiences. Now, I don't know if you know much about near-death experiences. I can tell you one of the things about people who've had near-death experiences, and right now, walking on the earth, there are millions and millions of people who've had them. They don't tend to share their experiences with other people. And the reason why is that often they're told, well, you were just dreaming, or it was just the lack of oxygen as you were dying, whatever the situation was. But I've had the opportunity to talk to a number of people who've had these experiences. And to them, they often say they're more real than real itself. One of the experiences that I've read about recently is from an author named Peter Panagore. He came out with a book called Heaven is Beautiful, and he has a fascinating story, especially because he really took him 3 decades before he ever shared it. Now, he is a United Church of Christ pastor. He lives up in Maine, and he was the pastor of a church for 13 years there that was actually a difficult church, mainly because over the course of his ministry there, someone was secretly embezzling not only from the church, but from him. And it hit a crescendo where they found it out, and it really created an incredible disruption in the church. And he realized that he had to help the church get back to normal. And well, he wrote a sermon about how God is still here. And that Sunday he planned to deliver the sermon. And as he got there, he held it up and he told the congregation, this is a sermon I prepared today, but actually, I want to tell you about an experience I had 30 years ago in 1980 when I was a college student at Montana State University. And he went on to tell the congregation, and really the public, for the first time, an amazing experience he had. He had agreed to go on a winter wilderness camping trip in Banff National Park in Alberta, Canada. And the end of the 10-day wilderness trip was going to be them ascending an ice climb of Lower Weeping Wall, which, well, you'll see the picture here of Lower Weeping Wall. And he and his guide, Tim, they had prepared for this, but Peter was inexperienced. They began their ascent up on the ice wall, and he said because he wasn't really adequately prepared for it, what should have been a 4-hour climb turned into a 7-hour climb. And by the time they got to the top, they were both soaking wet with sweat, and the temperatures were dropping rapidly below zero. He said at that point they realized they were going to probably die if they did not get off that mountain. And so, planning to descend in the starlight without much moon, they prepared to descend to rappel back down the cliff, although for Peter it was his first time really doing this. And as they began to rappel, the rope that they had looped around a tree at the top, it froze into place with the descending temperatures, and they were on a ledge, and they realized they had to get that rope done or they would be stuck on that ledge and never get to the bottom, and they would be found a day, maybe 2 days, maybe 3 days later dead. Well, they couldn't get the rope unstuck. And so in one final kind of foolish move, Peter actually took the rope and swang across, and as it did, the rope came free and he plunged down about 30 feet, coming to a complete jerk in the stop where he was just hanging there. And, well, he says in that moment, he died. He then went on to say about his experience of going through a tunnel, white light, all of that. And he said he met God face to face, or maybe spirit to spirit, or whatever it was, because he said there are no words to describe it. And he said this was a presence of just this incredible love, this incredible mercy and love and grace. And he said as a result, as they came face to face, he was led through a review of his life, not like a film going off in front of his eyes. But he said what he experienced was all the pain that he had caused others and had been caused him. He said he felt everything he had done to everybody and the impact on it, but especially the pain. And he came to realize just that in life you cannot avoid causing pain on other people. But he said he was allowed to feel what it felt like to other people. But he said he would have been incredibly despondent, except for the love that he felt, the mercy he felt, the forgiveness he felt. And he said in that moment he was changed in his whole perspective. Now, I could go deeper into the story. I certainly would encourage you to read his book because his accounting is really amazing. But he said in that moment he was given a choice. You can stay here or you can go back. And he said he thought about his life, he thought about his family, he thought about friends, and he made the decision to go back. But he said, he knew that in going back he was going to have a different life. One that was based on that kind of love that he experienced in God. And one, he said, well, I know I can never avoid causing pain in others. But even if I cause pain, I would also try to be a healing presence. He came up with an interesting name for God. He didn't call God God in those moments. He said the name he's come up for God is love, hope, joy, beauty, truth, charity, kindness, compassion, love, patience, beauty, love. And he said that's the name that captures what he experienced. Well, he came back to life, and he said that really for the next ensuing days and weeks, he said he was processing this thing. He said the next morning when they finally got back down, when he was resuscitated and he was finally got back down, he said he saw the most beautiful sunrise he's ever seen, and he said it lacked the beauty of what he experienced. And he said he knew he had made a mistake in that moment to come back to life, although he said it didn't make him suicidal. It just made him determined to live a life based on love and hope and joy and beauty and truth and charity and kindness and compassion and love and patience and beauty and love. Eventually, this experience, as he processed it through his life, eventually led him to go to seminary and eventually led him to become a pastor and eventually led him now into a radio ministry and podcast and others to try to share God's love. It's interesting because I do understand why he hasn't shared that with others, because I've not shared my study of this. I remember I did share it with a pastor about 3 or 4 years ago, And his response was an angry, irritated, I don't need to have those kind of books to tell me what's going to happen when I die. Almost like accusing me of reading something that was taboo or that was irrelevant. But books like that, stories like that, they stay with me and they influence my ministry and my life. And I want to share with you two insights that came out of reading Peter Panagor's book that I think are so important for ministry and the ministry you do in your church. The first thing he realized was that he gave a different definition from sin. It's not bad behaviors we do or disobedience to God or just like this awful stuff, but he said sin really is the pain we cause in life to other people and to ourselves. That we're called to love God, love others, and love self. And he said sin is the pain that we cause other people, not because we're bad, not because we're awful, but because we're human. To be human means to cause pain, whether it's in relationship with other people, whether it's in work, whether it's because we're prioritizing what we care about over the others, or whether it's the way we treat the earth or the world, or the polarization that's going on and the way we treat people who have different perspectives than us. He said we cause pain on each other. But he said the real hope of the world is a sense of love, because when we embrace love and let love just flow through us, that it has the power to heal wounds and to heal divisions. I think a lot about these ideas in the face not only of our recovering from the pandemic, but what I think is even the worst infection we have in our culture right now, which is the polarization. The pandemic has not been as hard on us as this just constant division of I'm right, you're wrong, I'm good, you're evil. Everything you believe in is terrible and you're going to hell. Everything I believe in is good and pure and holy. This kind of polarization is creating massive pain in the world. But we as pastors, we cannot change the world. But we have the ability to change and help the people around us. I think that as pastors, often we have gone astray because we worry so much about program and mission and ministry and attendance and giving and membership numbers and how active we are and how successful we are compared to other people. And I think in that we tend to lose a vision of love and a vision of people who are called to heal pain. We get so distracted by the stuff of ministry that we lose sight of the focus on love and healing pain. It's actually appropriate that I'm doing this in front of a statue in Pittsburgh of Mr. Rogers. And if you listen in the background, you can actually hear his voice coming across the speakers from his shows. This is a man who understood, a Presbyterian pastor. He was a man who understood the need to love and how love can heal division and heal pain. You know, one of the problems and one of the primary problems I think we have as Christians is actually we have a complete misunderstanding of the word salvation. And because we have this misunderstanding, it actually leads us to cause pain. Now, in the mainline church, we don't talk much about salvation. In the evangelical and in the Pentecostal churches, they do. But when they tend to talk about it, they tend to talk about it as rescuing, as saving people from the cesspool of sin so that they can get into heaven when they die. I don't think that's what it means at its roots. Don't just trust me on this. Go look up the word salvation in your Greek lexicon. What you'll find is, yes, it does mean to rescue. But even more, that word salvation, it's the root of the word salve. Like you have a wound, the Good Samaritan lifts the guy up, he puts oil in the wound and then an antiseptic and binds it. Actually, he puts the antiseptic first and then the oil. That's what a salve is. It heals. That word, salvation, at its core, also means healing. Now, I'm not the one, I didn't come up on this insight on my own. It actually came up because of my readings of a great spiritual writer, Morton Kelsey, who wrote about the loss of healing throughout Christian history. And also one of my professors at Pittsburgh Seminary, Don Gowan, who did a wonderful study of how we have misinterpreted that word salvation and turned it into getting into heaven when we die, as opposed to the mission of healing people. Read the Gospels. Count up how often Jesus teaches. Count up how often Jesus preaches. And then look at how often he heals. Sometimes he forgives and says that, I forgive you of your sin. But he understood salvation primarily was healing. Salvation wasn't necessarily just rescue to get you into heaven. There's a passage from James 5:13 through 15, and I'm going to summarize it here, where it says, "Are any among you sick? Call on the elders of the church, and the prayer of faith will save the sick, and the Lord will raise them up." It's a bad translation. The Greek word for that is soupsis, and it does mean to rescue and to save, but even more fundamentally, it means to heal. Think about this yourself. You call on people to pray over you because you're ill. Maybe you have COVID, maybe you have cancer, maybe you have something else. Do you really want them to pray over you so that you can get into heaven when you die? Or when you call all them together, are you asking them to pray so you can be healed? A much better translation. Call on the elders, and the prayer of faith will heal the sick, and the Lord will lift them up. In other words, get them to stand from their bed. I share these ideas because in this time of pandemic, in this time of polarization, as we're going forward and trying to not get back to normal, but actually build back better our churches for the future, I want to see if I can help you reframe your ministry. Can you change your understanding of sin and salvation from the bad we do and the thing that must happen to get us in heaven? Can we change it to sin as pain that we cause each other no matter how good we are, and salvation as the work of healing that pain in ourselves and others? Can you stop measuring success in terms of activities, in terms of giving levels, in terms of attendance or views, or ministries or mission, or whatever else it is? I don't mean to say these things aren't important. I've always tended to be data-driven, so I do pay attention to those things, but they never have distracted me from the focus on love in our ministry and in a church and at Samaritan. Can we stop measuring success in these terms and start measuring it in terms of health and healing and relationships and the ability to relieve and transform people so that they're living lives that are just healthier and more compassionate and more loving, where they're experiencing love, hope, joy, beauty, truth, charity, kindness, compassion, love, patience, beauty, love. I'd like you to take some time and just reflect on this. In everything you do as a pastor, can you see yourself as a conduit of love who has an opportunity in everything you do, whether it's in meetings or in classes or just interactions, to help heal people with God's love? I don't mean so they can throw away the crutches and walk again. I mean so they just can experience something healing and healthy in their lives. I'm going to give you this time to reflect on that. Just to reflect on whether God is calling you in to a ministry of healing and love. so glad you can be part of this here today and really grateful about this. And as you go, may God's blessings be on you. May God's love fill you. May you live with a sense of kindness and compassion and grace that flows through your life and your ministry and your relationships, especially when you're not aware of it. Go forth in God's love and grace. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.